DDTank, a game that made part of my life. If you used to play online games in the first half of the 2010s, you probably remember that name. Undeniable, it was a game that got part of many people's lives. Come on, it's very common to join with friends, shoot some ants while crawling on the ground. And even if you've never heard of it, relax, cause I'll tell you the full story of this internet treasure. Well, DDTank is a very casual turn-based online shooter game made in Flash for browsers. It was released in March 2009 and is the first game by Chinese developer Seven World, which was born in 2008 in the city of Shenzhen, but currently has its main headquarters in Wuxi. Apart from DDTank, this developer only made one more game, called Wartune. It's a turn-based strategy RPG released in 2011. But going back to DDTank, as you can see, it was released just 1 year after the company was founded. And it's funny that before it was officially launched, that is, in beta, it managed to get some attention around the world. It was inspired by another very famous game at the time, Gunbound, that probably was inspired by Worm Saga. The mechanics are simple. It takes place in a 2D plane and you must hit your opponent with your shots, considering the distance, gravity and wind force. In Gunbound you use vehicles to attack your opponent, but in DDTank we use weapons. And at the very beginning the game was only officially available for Asian servers, but after a while it came to the West. 2011 was the moment when the game became very popular. That's because the game got available on Orkut. That's right. I don't know if you remember, but it was very common for people to play online games on their social networks. And when I was a child, it was the thing that I used to do when on Orkut. As you can see, the game has this kawaii design that back in 2000s was very common in online games. In the game we have two main game modes, PvP and Instance. Well, PvP needs no explanation, it's exactly what you expect and can be played up to 4 vs 4. This mode had a very extensive range of stages and most of it is based on real locations, mainly from the Asian continent. You could also battle against people from other servers and even do GVG, Guild vs Guild. We'll talk about them later, but know that this mode was taken very seriously. There was another part of the players who preferred to play the instances that were on the expedition pier. Roughly speaking, it's like a dungeon, so they had the easiest campaigns up to the ultra difficult ones for very high levels. I can use one of the most famous and charismatic instances as an example, so you can understand better. The Gulu Kingdom. Who remembers these pinky little guys? At the first stages, the mission was to defeat a next number of enemies, and after that, you and your group prepared to the next phase, which was to defeat a boss or sub-boss, because at certain difficulties still had another or more stages with a final boss. And by the way, there are controversies with the Gulu Kingdom, as it was born with 8 stages in the Chinese version of the game, and after several level design changes in the first year, it has only 5 stages in the most advanced difficulty nowadays. And that's how it works. In instances, you had a chance to get a special item at the end, trying your luck on the cards. There were several adventures like Ant Cave, Run Run Chicken, Cthulhu, Shadow Castle, and I didn't even say everyone. And well, to complete all these changes, apart from having a good team, because after all the instances were intended to be played in groups, of course you needed to have good equipment. The game's weapons are pretty iconic to say the least. They range from literally salad, go for refrigerator and television, and then a ray gun. Or chicks. And the cool thing is that each one has its different stats, so some were focused on attack, other on defense, speed, etc. I can mention some classics such as Flames, Japan Dart, Explosive, Plunger, Nugget, or the rare Boomerang. And well, I can't fail to mention two specific weapons here, the AK-48 and the Hatchet. These two weapons were the most noobs in the game. The AK could be bought in the store for a very low price, and Hatchet came at the moment that you created the account as a tutorial weapon. But it turns out that these weapons are no longer available since 2013-2014. The tutorial weapon became the Japan Dart. That is, the AK-48 and Hatchet became very rare weapons. And the worst part, I remember that in mid-2011 I had the idea of making an account called Thor and using the Hatchet as my main weapon. But it turns out I didn't know how to write Thor and wrote Tour. Yeah, and do you think I did well for having the idea of keeping an item that without even know would become rare, so I would have done well, but I had the brilliant idea of throwing it away and use laser, because in my head it made sense since the character is the Thunder God. Seriously man, I still can't believe I did that, my god. But again, talking about weapons, they could be fortified with super stones. I mean nowadays, cause in the beginning it was the energy stones. They had levels from 1 to 5 and with each level of the stone and the item to be fortified, the success rate of this fortification process was reduced. Yeah, success rate, because at that time it could go wrong and your item would get worse. To prevent this, you could use divine amulets, but when you forgot to use one, there was a sad situation. Previously, it was only possible to fortify 12 times leaving the weapon plus 12, but currently it is possible up to 15 times or even more considering the advanced system. And at certain points the weapon changes its look, getting more and more badass. The changes occur in the stages plus 10, plus 12 and advanced 3. In DDTank we had a way to say how strong a person was, with the power. Nothing but a number that increased according to your stats. But it wasn't just the weapons that influenced this number. The clothes could also be fortified, as well as the hats. Rings, bracelets and glasses could also be improved, but not with the super stones. These could only be leveled through the synthesize, which basically there were 4 types of stones: the Phoenix, which increased the attack, the Serpent stones, which increases the defense, the Dragon increased the agility, and finally the Tiger ones that increase the luck. Weapons, clothes and hats could also make synthesize. And in addition to having so much to improve on your equipment, the character customization options were great. And finally, talking about equipment, there were also auxiliary items and pets. I think the most famous auxiliary items were the Angelic Arm. I suffered a lot to get this when I was younger. And the Barrack Shield, which were available already at the beginning of the game. Pets were introduced in 2013. You could take care of them and make them stronger and even evolve them. Each pet has its own abilities and some are way OP. Even in the first version of the game we had a few more things in the lobby, like the community, which was basically a place where players were looking for someone to marry. And doing that is not something very cheap, not even in the game, because you had to get an engagement ring to ask someone to marry, and that ring cost 999 coupons, the in-game currency purchased with real money. But if you made it to get a partner, that would be announced to the entire server and you could have a wedding party. But of course, that's not the end. The couple also get some items and the Eternal Love Ring, which improve their attributes. Just like every good online game at the time, there were guilds. The League is where you could see the list of players who were in the same guild as you, but it also had the Guild Vault, which is basically a huge inventory for you to store your items and not need to use your backpack. And that was the main reason someone wanted to join a league. You could even borrow gold, but people also liked to climb the guild ranking by winning GVGs. Another very important reason for people to join a guild was the guild's blacksmith, who after a certain level started to give bonuses for fortifying and merging items. The auction was the place where players auctioned things off, as long as the item in question had the unbound status. And it was very similar to an auction. You ask for an initial value and whoever offered the most took the item. This can be said to be one of the only, if not the only way to get coupons without buying them. But after so much stress, how about relaxing at the spa? Here was one of the few places in the game where the player could walk, and many used this place to just chat. But the real reason this place existed was to earn XP. So you paid the entrance in gold and could stay there as long as you wanted. And just for being there, you earned XP. The idea was for you to leave the PC and go do other things. Another very important space was the Hall of Fame. It was a place where you could see the strongest players, either by power, by level. It even had a guild ranking. And well, obviously many wanted to be there. Among those places the competition was intense. And outside these places there was also the shop, which was just the shop. Only thing I could comment is that almost everything here was bought with coupons. There were some things that could be bought with free coins or medals, but here at the beginning of it was garbage or could only be used for a few days. DDTank New Era arrived in mid-2011. Many mechanics have been changed and improved, and the card system and practice system have been introduced. But the most important thing was probably the dojo, with the mechanics of master and student. Basically, a player of level 20 above could have up to 3 students between level 6 and 19. The master and his student could make special instances or play PvP, and doing so won some prizes. In addition, some new instances were also added, mainly more difficult, since the ones from the first version were already too easy for some of the stronger players. Dragon's Lair, Shadow Castle, and Cthulhu instances were introduced to address this issue. In 2013, the DDTank 2 World Tournament update arrived, which for many was the best time of the game, having many updates throughout the year. Here, the pet system and the fighting spirit were introduced. Specific instances for master and students were also created for the MA tasks. But not everything was perfect. The pearl system was completely reworked, but instead of exchanging players' pearls for equivalent, Seven Worlds simply deleted them all and everyone had to start from scratch. But something really cool is that DDTank distributors got together to make a world tournament. That's right, players really enjoyed the event, and considered that it was a browser game, it was a remarkable fact. In the Blacksmith, the game added new functions as Refine and Gilding. For the end of 2013 to 2014, there was another update, because after all, the World Tournament had already ended, and so being DDTank 2 Part 2. The first difference is that the game lobby was changed, and it didn't take long for players to realize that they no longer had the spa. Yes, they removed the spa out of the blue. The pier changed its name to Bodyard and gained 3 new instances, but the coolest thing was that a new game mode was created, the boss fight, which was basically a super strong dragon boss for the entire server to defeat, and whoever hits the last hit gets a few more things. It is worth remembering that it is the same dragon as the Dragon's Lair instance. It was in this update that the energy stones were replaced by super stones, and also level 12 was no longer the limit. So after that, the weapon could be advanced from 1 to 3. For that, it was necessary to have the advanced stones, and the success rate of advancing the weapon was proportional to the amount of stones you spent. The end of 2014 and 2015 was the time of the DDTank 3, and since then most players didn't like the idea. The first thing to comment is that the lobby is no longer that point and click interface, and now players had to walk, just like in the old spa. But they could also use their mounts, which were introduced in the game. The game adopted a horseback riding theme to introduce the mount system that couldn't be used in combat. It was just to walk around on the lobby, which from one side to the other was about 10 meters. Such adrenaline. However, the mounts came with 2 new attributes in the game, Magic Attack and Magic Defense. The Storm system and the Enchantment system were also introduced. As you can see, with so many mechanics, the game was getting more and more complex. All this so that there is always a way for the player to get stronger. And as usual, we had new instances like the Corsair. In 2016, the DDTank 3 Future version update arrived, and got its name because so many players complained about the new look. And so it was changed to a more futuristic version. The mechanics added the tempo system and the vitality system. The vitality consisted of a bar that was in the upper left corner and went down as you do instances. It was created to nerf farming. In 2017, the mining system was introduced, where players used their vitality to let the character mine items automatically, and there was also another system to improve weapons. But this year, everything was going in a downward spiral in the game. Many players stopped playing. And fast forwarding to nowadays, DDTank US is closed. Yeah, I don't know when it closed, but it was about 1 or 2 years ago. But there is the mobile DDTank that was officially released in Asia in 2014 but came out in North America June 2015. We've reached the end of the timeline, but there's still a very important factor that couldn't be forgotten. Just like practically every online browser game, DDTank has always been a pay-to-win game. Seriously, that's a mercenary game. Money has always been involved in these games. As I said, these are the coupons, the game cash, and you needed those to be strong. Like, you could even get strong without spending money on the game, but beside a lot of work, you would still need luck to win some coupons at some events. With them, you could buy weapons, stones, VIP pass that had many bonuses, clothes too, of course. I remember when I was a child, my dream was to have coupons. Was always asking my mom to buy some. In short, the difference between a free player and a player who credited was huge. And if you think that's all, know that most of the events you need coupons to participate. If you think the pass system of today's games are a little unfair, you don't know DDTank's VIP, really. And of course, an honorable mention to all the pirate DDTanks, a place with 400 MS where you spend 2 hours leveling your weapons and stuff and then die in the first round. And well, finishing, the game is officially closed, but you still can play some alternative version on internet. And without a doubt, is a game that will live in your memory forever. The afternoons I spent playing and all the time that I spent trying to get an angelic arm. Seriously, I don't know what happened, I didn't get it at all. But that's it. This is my gift to you who have played DDTank. I hope you enjoyed it. See you later.